If you guys have not seen ERMES Gasparini's latest video, he is demonstrating the way that he's going to be training for Michael Todd. And this match is confirmed as far as I'm aware. ERMES says in this video he's going to be pulling Michael Todd at February, and I believe that's going to be at East versus West, and the winner of this match is going to go up against Levon. Now, ERMES has this crazy looking apparatus here, and essentially what this is it is some steel pipe welded together in such a way that is supposed to perfectly mimic Michael Todd's King's move angle. And you're going to see the way that this works. You basically, this part right here is the elbow. This part up here is supposed to be the hand. And then the reason the pipe is so long is because this is going to give ERMES' sparring partner or his coach a ton of leverage to apply up pressure. Basically, you just grab onto this handle at the end, and you also have this T shape, and that's going to allow his coach not only to apply pronation, but also just to have a much more controlling grip when he is applying up pressure. So you can see the way that this would work. You put this, I believe you put it on the pad. So ERMES right here, the way he does it there. So the elbow's on the pad, and then his coach is going to grab onto this handle, and then ERMES can work this angle where he's really close to the pad and essentially mimic or replicate a sticky point, the same one that Michael Todd is going to have. And what's cool about this apparatus, because of this T-shaped handle, is that you can apply both up pressure and pronation at the same time. And it looks like you could potentially even apply some kind of sweeping pressure, some external shoulder rotation pressure, so pressure in kind of this direction. Michael sometimes sweeps outside like that. So I think that this is a really, really cool idea. I also think it's pretty funny to literally make an apparatus that is designed to mimic your opponent that you have coming up. But overall, I do think it's cool. Now, I do have some concerns for this particular design because I don't know. I think this would do a really good job of mimicking Michael's King's move angle. However, to me, if you're trying to beat a King's mover, I think probably you don't want to pull them in their King's move angle. I think you don't want to allow them to hit this angle because this is the angle in which Michael Todd is the strongest. Now, if you're using this to train for some very specific things, because obviously at some point you are going to have to actually finish your opponent in the match, ERMES is going to have to do that 4 times in a row. And so this could potentially be very useful for just kind of training that transitional press. So once you have climbed up and over the top of your opponent, then getting your shoulder behind, maintaining your cup, controlling the pronator of Michael Todd, and then actually pressing him down into the pin pad. So if this is what ERMES is using this for, and it's mainly just to work on that actual pinning part at the very end, I think that this is a great idea. I think that this would probably be very effective in that. My only concern, though, is that if ERMES is kind of going into this fight assuming that he's going to be at this angle right here a lot, or even this angle right here. To me, if you are arm wrestling a King's mover at this angle, if you are on the offensive side of the table, I think you're making it a lot harder on yourself than you need to. So to kind of give an example of this, let's look at Devin Larratt versus Michael Todd. Now, one of the things about this match that I remember finding very interesting, and I think that this is one of the ways you can beat a King's mover. Michael did this versus Devin, and then later he did something very similar against Denis Saplenkov. Both of those guys have a good King's move. Michael probably even has more of a sticky King's move. But the thing about both Michael and Denis is that they are way stronger when they are stretched out, or at least they're applying a lot more pressure, a lot more up pressure, and a lot more pronation into the match when their arm angle is stretched out. So the thing is, they can only get to that stretched out arm angle if you allow them to go there. Back in the day when there was no humerus below the table foul, you could, if you're Michael, you can simply hang off the table and you can access that straight arm angle or close to straight arm angle whenever you want to. But because of the fact that there's this humerus cannot go below 90 degrees or cannot go below parallel rule now, that means that the only way for Michael to access his King's move is if Devin takes the match there, or if ERMES takes the match there coming up in a few months. So Michael's opponent controls whether or not the match actually goes to a King's move. And what I remember about this match is that most of the time, at least in round 1, Devin kind of starts showboating a little bit after this, but in the very first goes, Devin fights Michael Todd on his own losing side of the table, or maybe somewhere in the middle, most of the rounds. And part of the reason he's doing this is because he's intentionally not giving Michael access to that King's move angle. Notice how Michael's arm angle is maybe at around 90 degrees. Michael is probably 20 or 30% weaker here than he would be if Devin had simply surged toward the pin pad and allowed Michael to get to that really sticky spot. So this is obviously nowhere near the angle that we were seeing ERMES train at. It's much more so on the losing side of the table. And notice how what Devin will do is he will hit and he will come back to that losing side of the table. He will hit, come back to the losing side of the table. And he's intentionally working Michael through this range of motion. He's following Michael. He's working him through this range of motion where Michael is weaker. And he's making him use more musculature and less bone structure. And then eventually, as he has climbed more and more and more, he climbs a lot. But you can see he does this little pin attempt, and his wrist begins to flatten out. So to me, this is maybe a mistake. This was too early. As soon as you start trying to pin Michael Todd's going to get way stronger. So in other words, it's way, way easier to take Michael from the B side to the A side than it is to actually pin him. Pinning Michael Todd, getting him that last 5-6 inches down to the pin pad is super, super difficult. So if you're going to fight him, you might as well fight him on the losing side of the table, or your losing side of the table where he is significantly less strong. And I think that's what we see here from Devin. Now he does begin to creep more toward that side of the table, but you can see even here he still can't really pin. There's a couple of pin attempts and they're failed, and you see his wrist buckle back. And then Devin realizes, he retreats back to the center table. Now he's back at center. He climbs more, and he climbs so far. He's so far out onto the fingertips of Michael Todd. He's improved the depth of grip so much. And then eventually, after all that, the position here is just ridiculous. Devin's whole hand is pretty much past Michael's hand at this point. He's just all over his thumb, totally controlling his pronator. And now he's in a position where he can actually press. But even still, you can see his cup angle opens up just a little bit. Right there. You can see that angle open up. So it's just crazy how strong Michael is right next to the pin pad. And in this match, he wasn't even really hitting that full-blown King's move. So going back to looking at ERMES training, the only thing that concerns me a little bit is if ERMES is planning on fighting Michael Todd at an angle like this for a significant portion of the match, I think that might be putting a lot of unnecessary wear and tear on his wrist flexion, and a lot of unnecessary wear and tear on everything, because Michael's just way stronger here. But especially ERMES' wrist. I think by putting down pressure, by not simply rising and by not fighting Michael on that losing side of the table, there might be a lot of unnecessary damage, and this could be the very thing that turns the match around and begins to allow that battle of efficiency to swing into the favor of Michael Todd. And once it swings that way, I don't think that there's any way ERMES is going to get it back. If his wrist starts to crack back during this match, it's probably all over. He doesn't really have great options beyond that. I think ideally, ERMES is fighting Michael the way that Devin's fighting Michael here on this losing side of the table, and he's using his 100-kilo back pressure. He climbs, he adjusts, he climbs, and then eventually, when he is so far over the top of Michael that Michael just has absolutely nothing, like what Devin did here, then you can press him from here. Once you're all the way up and over the top. And ERMES can keep his cup if he does it that way, but if he rushes, and you see Devin do it, and you see most of Michael's opponents do it, Gennady, almost everyone who's faced him, there's always at least 2 or 3 failed pin attempts where it just feels like you've got him. There's no way that he could stop you from here. The position is just so ugly. You try to pin Michael Todd, and we're going to see one right here in a second. I got to go back a little bit. Right there. It looks like Devin has everything, but he still tries to pin him, and his wrist buckles. So you really have to wait. You really have to have everything. And if you have to climb, if you have to take all that ground, you might as well do it on the losing side of the table, where Michael is significantly weaker because he doesn't have that stretched out angle. So let me know what you guys think about this. Obviously, ERMES knows what he's doing, but it seems like some people do end up pulling Michael in this way. So, of course, ERMES is a much better arm wrestler than I am, so I trust him in his strategy that he's bringing into this match. But I am curious if he's going to fight him on the winning side of the table or the losing side of the table, more like Devin did, based off of this apparatus that he's going to be using. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you later.